you doing, Challenge and Choose Nation? You're listening to Challenge and Choose Radio Network. I'm your host, Chad Butler. I've got producer Jacob with me again today. He likes to come on every now and again. It makes it a little easier for me to actually talk to a person versus just talking to the airwaves. So thanks for coming on with me again, Jake.
Always my pleasure. Always my pleasure.
You know, for those of you who have heard us before, we talk about mindsets. That's what we do. We want people to get new results in life. That's our whole platform. Our motto is new stories, new life. If you've seen my book, you've seen Max the dog on the cover. He's running his little guts out to get that tail. In life, we all get into these patterns that we're oftentimes unaware of. And Max the dog on the cover of my book, Stop Chasing Your Tail, it's so relatable to every part of our lives on how we get into these dang mindsets, which create the stories we tell, which creates our effort. You know, the model we live by, Jacob, is our mindsets lead to our behaviors. And our behaviors lead to the results we get in life. So Max the dog believes, he's in a story that's forcing him to just go in circles. He's not getting the results. One of our last episodes, we were talking about a mindset of feeling stupid or inadequate, something around intelligence. You shared that. I've shared it. I would say 80% of the people that I've worked with through my workshops, through my private coaching, through just meeting people and them being vulnerable and sharing with me, what's holding them back. That is such a huge one. One of the things I learned from overcoming this mindset that was huge transformational for me was this, Jacob. A mindset is so far-reaching, or can be so far-reaching. I think you can appreciate that mindset of feeling stupid is interwoven into every part of our life, and it's not just you shared with this, this desire to get educated and train yourself in all of these areas of your life to kind of help overcome these feelings of inadequacy. For me, I dealt with, the ways I dealt with it. What was interesting for me is when I overcame the mindset that attorneys and CPAs were deal killers for financial planners. I spent 17 years in the industry. For 5 years, they were deal killers. For the next 12, they were the greatest things that ever happened. They fed me all of my business. Two different mindsets, two different outcomes. Our thoughts lead to our results in life. But what was interesting for me was I thought, oh my gosh, me and CPAs, we get along so good now. Like we love working with each other. So I started to see how these mindsets played into relationships. And relationships are kind of the key to life, in my opinion. Everything in our life is about relationships, whether it's our spouses or girlfriend, loved ones, children, friends, our family, work colleagues, just our whole environment is about relationships. And I started to say to myself, there's something here. Like I want to start improving upon this model that I was developing for success and wealth. And I thought, this same model relates to relationships. How can I relate this to my marriage? How could I relate it to my clients? And as soon as I asked a question, I couldn't help but my mind just started recalling and replaying these past experiences with certain clients that I hated. I had clients that I had these preconceived ideas that they were always skeptical. Every time I met with them, I knew that they were going to be skeptical of the programs we put in place for them, They were skeptical about all of my advice, and I had to resell them every time I met with them. I hated meeting with them. So I said to myself, how much of that is truly them, and how much of that is me? So I thought about it a little bit, and I thought about how I overcame these mindsets with CPAs and I applied it. Next thing I know, I'm telling my secretaries, start scheduling the appointments with these group of people. It's the same group of people that I avoided like the plague in the beginning.
Well, it's kind of funny that that you're talking about it, and I think this is the direction you may be going with it too, but this is what I'm seeing right here is a pattern of first your mindset affected how your relationship with those people were. And you said that the CPAs were this, the CPAs were that, the attorneys were this, the attorneys were that. But then once you overcame that mindset and you started building a relationship with them, it almost seemed like that was the door that you've been waiting to open. That brought some of the success. And also in your marriage, it's like time you change that mindset and try to figure out how can this be implemented into my relationship. It also gave you the relationship. There's that one quote I think I've heard you say before, something about your fear, the cave that you fear the most holds your treasures.
Yeah. And that's a Joseph Campbell quote. It's so true. The fear that holds us back, The other quote that I love so much from Carl Jung, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will guide our life, and we'll just call it fate. So these beliefs that we have, the beliefs that you had and I had, and all of the ones that we manifest, we'll just call it fate until we become aware of them. See, now I had awareness. I had an awakening moment that, hey, I can impact my relationships based upon how I view them. So I had a secretary that I kind of believed, I really believed, Jake, that when I left the office, she would just become this little social butterfly, use the phone, just give gab with all of the other secretaries. Every time I came in, I would see it. It became true. And I thought, I'm going to change that. I'm going to stop viewing her as untrustworthy and start viewing her as trustworthy. Like, I can't believe she's a beautiful connector. And instead of me worrying about her connecting with the girls of the office, I started telling myself the story that I've got the perfect secretary because she's so good with my clients. She represents me and my business perfectly because she's a problem solver. She's a wonderful communicator, and she was. What was interesting is all of a sudden what became true for me before, now my new stories started becoming true. My clients, all of a sudden, this was like, I couldn't help to ask myself if it was just a coincidence, but I knew better, right? Because of what I've learned from these other transformations. Next thing I know, I'm getting calls from my top clients. We just want you to know that we love the secretary. We love her so much. If you ever want to get rid of her, we'll take her. And I even had a couple of people say, hey, listen, we're good friends, but I'm going to hire her away from you. Like, the relationship changed. Now, I had her for a long time, and those weren't the results. I wasn't getting those phone calls in the beginning. So a lot of time had passed. Now, she was wonderful. Don't get me wrong. She was really, really a great secretary. But all I'm getting at is when I changed my view of her, it was interesting how all of my results changed. Then I applied it to my clients. The clients I dreaded seeing, I changed my story about them. And when I changed my story about them, they became my favorite clients. I developed relationships from people I didn't even know the personality of some of my clients because we were always like just so business. And because I feared that they were going to be so critical of me, I never allowed my personality to come out and define their personality. I came in very gray. Can you just kind of imagine, I would come into these appointments and I was very sterile and I wasn't being myself. I'm a fun dude. That's my nature, is to be fun. Making people laugh is what I was put on the planet for, right? And I'd go into these meetings and I was just a dud because I was so skeptical that they were just going to fire me or, shut me down,
kick you out.
Yeah, not kick me out, but not be really open.
Yeah.
And when I changed my view of them, there were two of these guys who I dreaded. Now, I really want you as listeners, Jake, I really want you to really capture this. In one instance, there was a guy that I didn't like, but he was a big client. I enjoyed him, but deep down, I didn't like seeing him a lot. My point was, for 7 years or a long time, maybe it wasn't quite 7, maybe it might have been 4 years, I just didn't like working with him. I changed my mindset, and he became one of my greatest friends. Like this guy who I dreaded, now was when I allowed myself to be open to it, and I got rid of the stories. Max the dog, what did you call making a track in the,
Oh, yeah. Burning the track.
Burning a path in the, right? I was burning the circular path with some of these people, and when I had an awakening moment, an awareness, and I challenged it, it was a completely new relation. Nothing changed. My point is, it's the same people, different story, and 100% different outcomes. Do you see this? Like with my clients, when I'm doing these workshops, I think sometimes people don't take it as literal as they should. It's like it's that literal. If you don't like the outcome you're getting in something, change the story. Change the story, and you get a whole new outcome. CPAs, in January, we hate each other, right? By July, we're best friends. Why? Nothing. What changed? It was just my story that changed. And I'm getting a completely new outcome. Now, when CPAs like you and you like them, guess what happens as a financial planner? I'm making a lot more money. It's easier because I'm working with high-end people who are awesome with their clients. I'm awesome with my clients, and together we're referring back and forth, and our clients are getting the greatest advice, the greatest synergy from their professionals. They're getting their results. My point is, it's such a win-win, and I kick myself for not understanding this sooner.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
On a little bit of this? And this question actually came from you talking right now. And I just started thinking about how powerful is it when we change our mindsets? But how powerful is it when people around you have that superior mindset or have the ability to change their mindset? What if so much could happen with just you changing yours? What happens when the people around you change theirs too? Or does that help people around you change theirs?
You know what? You hit a question that I want to talk to. We're up against it. We got to go to a sponsor. Let's go to a break real quick. And let's come back and address that.
President Obama, in a radio interview with Marketplace, said the financial sector is still too focused on risk-taking and self-enrichment. The policymakers need to take additional measures, quote, so that we have a banking system that is doing what it is supposed to be doing to grow the real economy, unquote. So the question this week to our listeners, what are your options when the bank turns you down and you need working capital for your business today? We would love your feedback for this subject on our Facebook page at facebook.com/USA Network Radio. For this story and more, stay tuned to the best news around here on USA Network Radio.
Challenge and Choose Nation. You're listening to the Challenge and Choose Network. Of course, I'm your host, Chad Butler. We've got producer Jake with us again today, our favorite guest. We're talking about these mindsets, and he blew my mind with this question. The question, to restate, was kind of a two-prong. When you imagine if everyone around us changed their mindsets. Imagine, we've discovered in our life the impact that it has. So Jacob's question is like, what's the impact when you change your mindset? And we were talking off air for a moment here, and here's what I've learned in my life. It doesn't matter what their mindsets are. It doesn't matter. You can only control you. And if you get the results you want, so if another person has a mindset around you and you don't have it on them, you still get the result you want. If I treat you kindly and love you because I think you're a great guy, you have no choice but to treat me nice back because that's how I'm treating you and that's how I'm going to make you feel. So our mindsets actually, in essence, does change the mindsets of others. Remember that the CPA, I made them believe that I was narrow-minded and that commission was all whatever my story was is what I made them believe. Their mindsets were affected based upon how I believed. So we directly change people's perception by our own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were talking about this idea of in relationships. I changed my relationships with professionals. I changed my relationships with my staff. If I thought, sometimes I'd get tight, and I would find that my relationship with my staff sometimes would start getting, start banging our heads, or I'd find myself being very judgmental, or I'd find myself kind of like blaming them for a lot of problems. I'd come home, tell my wife, God, they're just X, Y, and Z. I'm just so frustrated. And I learned something, Jake. By listening to my own voice, the water cooler at the office, what am I saying about a client? What am I saying about the industry, the economy, all of the things that are limiting me, right? If you listen to your stories, you can have these awakening moments. Whenever I would get into these little patterns of my secretaries, blank, 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 pointing fingers at the problems that we're having are them, I would immediately recognize that the problem was always me. I was creating these outcomes. And sometimes I'd have to kind of like suck my pride in, take responsibility, change the story, and immediately the results changed. So I started getting good at it. And I really wanted to apply it to my marriage. I started to kind of see, again, understanding my language and then understanding my environment. I started to recognize, at a more transparent level, that we had some patterns in our relationship, our whole marriage. And we had been married at this time, close to 10 years, a decade. Now, we were happy people. We loved each other. It was a great relationship. It was great, but we had these patterns that we were putting a lot of effort into. And one of the things I wanted to mention earlier was these mindsets we get into to keep these stories alive and real. It takes a lot of effort to keep the stories alive and happening. Because if I believe my secretary is lazy, I've got to put forth a lot of effort to make that come true. And when we get rid of it, all of a sudden we have all this freed energy. When I got rid of the CPA story, for example, I was like, wow, this business is actually pretty easy. I've been working way too hard. And it was a lot of it was just the mental effort that is required to keep these. I'm inadequate. I'm not smart enough. I'm a fraud. I fear success. I fear going broke. Whatever the mindsets are, it takes a lot of energy keeping these stories alive. So in my marriage, I started to recognize the patterns we got ourselves into. But the challenge was I spent the better part of 10 years convincing myself that it was her fault. All of my blame was outward. I took no responsibility. It was her fault that we had these patterns. So even though I had learned it with CPAs, I had learned it with my staff, I had learned it with clients, even with my family and some other relationships, when my biggest relationship, which was my marriage, came front and center for me, and I wanted to improve it, but I'm like, she's going to have to fix this. So guess what I did for the better part of about 5 years was trying to teach her about mindsets on how she needs to change her mindset around these patterns we got into so we could have bliss. I literally used all my sales skills that I had to try to convince her to change her mindset because this sure as hell wasn't my fault. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think that's so relatable. I see it in so many people's lives, but we're unwilling to take responsibility for it. And I just asked myself simply one day when I was super frustrated, we had just probably had a little spat about something, and it was the same damn arguments over and over for so long. I was so fed up with it, I thought, okay, whatever we're doing is not working, and I love this woman with all my heart. I know she loves me. It's silly for us not to have bliss in our relationship. As good as our relationship is, it's silly for us to be wasting so much time on these issues. So I said, okay, for the sake of me wanting to have greater happiness and greater communication, I'll suck it up. So I kind of tricked myself into like, it's her fault, but you know what? I'll be the bigger person.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we do that a lot.
I'll just be the bigger person. Of
Yeah.
course it's her fault. Right? But when I did it, when I changed my story, because all these stories that I had around her were coming true. I made them come true all the freaking time. And when I changed my story to, oh, she's so passionate, she's so loving, she's so understanding, like I don't know what it is about her, but she's just so genuine, and she just loves me so much. Like I can just see it. I just changed some stories around, and it was instantaneous, just like it was with my secretaries. My point is it's so simple that sometimes the simplest things to do are very difficult. They're simple, but they're challenging. I had to take a lot of responsibility. I had to suck in a lot of pride. But the results were immediate. My new stories, it's like it's an immediate response. If you buy into it 100%, you know what I mean? If I bought into it about half, I'd get about half the result, right? Because we're going to make the stories. We're going to make these stories real in our life. My marriage just transformed, and this was about the time, Jacob, that I'm like, I wonder if I should get out of this industry and just start teaching this stuff because I love it so much. I'm passionate about it, and I'm able to start getting all the results I want. If there was any pattern in my life that I didn't like, even if it was something as simple as I used to believe that if I got voicemails at work, they had to be bad. If people are calling my office, they must have a problem. Yeah. I had this mindset, and it drove my secretaries crazy. And when my secretaries left for the day, and I came like after hours to, I worked later, what have you, I'd come in the office, and if that red light was flashing on my phone, and if it had 4 or 5, I had a phone that told me how many messages I had. Yeah. It would put me in a coma, and there was no way in hell I would listen to them. I would wait till the next day, and I'd say to my secretary, if they're a problem, fix it. Don't tell me about it. Fix it, because it would upset me. Yeah. And my point was it seems so trivial. It's phone messages, but it was affecting my life. Like I hated them. I just thought, oh my gosh, who's canceling all of their stuff? Who's canceling their appointments? Or there had to be these traumatic things, right? It always had to be big. It changed. I'm like, you know what? Is it possible? So one of the things when I address my clients or in my workshops is we talk about both scenarios. Because remember with the CPAs, my secretaries, my wife, all of these experiences, there were 2 stories, and both stories were true. Whatever I thought is the result I got. So I'm thinking here, this is a box that has messages on it. How am I going to impact that? Right? They're messages. How am I going to make those messages positive? I didn't care. It's worked in every other area of my life. So I remember sitting down with my secretary, and I think she might have thought I was a little loony, but she became a practitioner of this. I thought, I want better results here. So the first thought was if there was a message, it had to be a problem, right? It had to be. And invariably it would be, right? I thought, well, what's another way of viewing this? If I want a new story, new life, the motto of Challenge and Choose, I got to come up with a new story here. I thought, is it possible that people love me so much that they want to call and give me referrals? They're calling to say thank you. And they've got a referral of a close friend of theirs that needs help. And they want to make damn sure that I am their financial planner. Is that possible, Jake?
Oh, absolutely.
Is it possible that people are calling because they want more of what I've been doing for them? Their income's increased. Instead of spending it on cars and travel, they want to save more. Is that possible?
Absolutely.
It's possible. So what story do I want to live in? That the messages are all problems, headaches, people canceling, that kind of stuff? Or what if people are calling for referrals and they're calling to say thank you and show appreciation, and it's new business. It's, hey, I heard about you through someone and I'm calling to get an appointment. What's interesting is when I changed my story, I won't say that every message I had was that, but I can guarantee you it was dramatically different.
Well, it could have also been, I was talking to one of my clients recently, and they're telling me, it almost seems like they're dealing with the same thing you were. Like, if somebody's calling, it has to be something bad.
It's got to be a problem.
But they'd also be wondering why they were missing appointments or people weren't showing. But sometimes the call was just to say, hey, I'm a couple minutes late, or hey, I can't make it. Can I reschedule? Can I do this? And if they avoid it and they ignore it and they don't address it, or don't call the person back, a lot of times it did end up being the result of what they said it was going to be.
It's nuts. It's amazing to me. People always ask me, why are you so good at working with salesmen? Why are you able to take salesmen and transform their business? I get the question all the time, like, what's the secret to it? And it's this. The secret to success is all frame of mind. I even met a bodybuilder once, and I said, what do you attribute your success? I mean, he's ripped. He's like, bodybuilding is 95% mental. That shocked me. I thought it was, getting to the gym, it's the efforts, hard work. I expected him to say hard work. I expected him to say, he said it's like 90% mental. It's all mental. And I should have known that being in the position that I'm in, because sales and success, it's all mental. People will like read the books. They want to like learn the best language. They want to arm themselves by educating. And those aren't bad things, but those things don't do anything for you if you don't believe in yourself. If you don't believe you're capable of having success. So working with insurance agents, like guys that couldn't close, managers would just bombard them with more language, on how to close. And then they would send them back out, and they'd come back and get the same results. And they would role play with these guys on how to close deals. And I would sit and watch this. I'm like, these guys are just making tracks in the grass. They're just chasing their tail. They're getting the same results. Why are they getting the same results? So I remember grabbing one guy in particular, because I hated spending my time with a lot of people who really weren't willing to change. I found that if you try to force change upon people, if they're not ready, they're not going to do it. You're just spinning your wheels trying to help them.
Sometimes pushing them further away.
So I had this one particular guy who we were good friends, and he'd ask me questions. And so I went up to him, and I didn't volunteer, but I said, we got talking about some patterns. Upon further discussion, the guy felt inadequate. Again, it might have been this feeling of inferiority, not being smart enough. He was a brilliant dude, had perfect language, but had no confidence in closing business. He had no confidence in himself. He didn't own the products that he was selling, okay, because I can't afford them. He had mindsets around. So he wasn't living it, okay, but he wasn't living it because he didn't believe it. After working with him one-on-one, he was able to overcome it and become the closer we all knew he was. But he had to get past this mindset around feeling inadequate, not feeling smart enough. He kind of felt like a lot of people I work with, like a fraud. A lot of people I've worked with, they feel, no one's good. They're not going to trust me. I'm dumb. Or they're not going to trust me for whatever reason whatever story they're telling themselves. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, does this make sense? Like, am I making sense here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We need. You're the producer. We got to get phone calls to come in. Can we add that to this thing?
Oh, absolutely.
I want to have some callers calling so we can figure out what everyone's thinking. I mean, it makes sense to me, and I've been able to change every part of my life. I'm having a ton of success with salespeople, managers, C-level people. They get it. And when they are willing to change, it's amazing the results that we're getting.
Absolutely. Well, talking about the calling in and just getting to the end of this, don't forget, you guys, you can give Chad a call at 512-575-3561. Once again, 512-575-3561. You can also find them at challengeandchoose.com. A lot of great information and resources there. Also, the challengeandchoosestore.com we just created recently. You guys could book your training, corporate training. We have a big event coming up in Pflugerville. When is that, Chad?
It's the end of February. I wish I had the dates right in front of me. We'll get them out to you. Check on our website. It's around the 23rd and 24th of February. We're doing a ropes course. It's going to be a lot of fun. Two-day workshop. It's going to be fun. We're going to challenge you.
Life-changing, definitely. Life-changing. So once again, visit us at challengeandchoose.com or the challengeandchoosestore.com.